So this is probably the first time that I've had a guest on who, when she heard what I did for a living, she was like, I don't want to talk to her at all. Can you please, Maura, tell us why you felt that way? And then we'll get into what you do.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks
Um,
for talking to
so,
me
oh
after that.
yeah, it's cool. Um, when I mean I knew what your business was, but when we were standing at the networking event and you started to explain to me in more depth, I was so quickly activated. My heart started beating really fast, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And the more you talked, I was like, okay, it was like I was propelled back into my divorce and my experience. And it was this part of me that was like, no, no, we're not, no, no, we don't go there. And I thought, I don't want to hear this. And I had to practice really deactivating myself and getting back into the moment and realizing it's not, this isn't my divorce. It's just it was so similar and so fast can I go to that experience because it was so difficult and took a lot of work to heal from it, to
Yeah.
recover from it. So
And and so now you are a recovery coach. And often when we hear the word recovery, we think about addiction. We think about uh, drug addiction, sex addiction, alcohol addiction. But we talked about how all of us really have something that we are recovering from. So why don't you tell us what is a recovery coach? Because I think a lot of people don't even know that people like you exist, just like with us.
Mm.
And how do you specifically help people?
So a recovery coach is sorry, defined as it's someone that is interested in promoting another person's recovery and taking them on that journey, being um, their supporter and making a recovery plan, and primarily to remove barriers that are in front of people from actually recovering. And there's multiple pathways to recovery, and it's a it's a big sphere. It's not just the usual drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex addiction. It's more. So
Okay.
those are definitely the high points.
So
Hmm.
what are some of the benefits that someone could get by using a recovery coach?
Well, in the case of a drug addiction or a alcohol addiction, it can save their life. You're part of a team. Sorry, I talked a lot today, so I'm a little. Um,
That's okay.
I know. You're part of a team usually that helps out. Some cases are very severe. Sometimes it's a young person, and you need a serious team to really circle the wagons around this person and try to help them. Um, Most of the time, if you're an extreme case, though, then you're put into a recovery center so that you're safe. It's when you get out of treatment that most people are looking for a recovery coach.
Now you mentioned
So
they're looking for it, but I imagine that a lot of people don't feel like they need help with recovery. Do you find that, or do you find that people that find you, they are like, I know I need help, and that's why I found you, versus being
often
pushed to
it,
talk to you?
yeah, often it will be presented to them as here's another component, here's another support system that can help you. So often if it could be recommended to you when you are in treatment or when you begin to work with an organization outside of treatment.
Okay. And what
Is that
about, so
is
go ahead.
is that answering it?
Yeah, I
I
was
guess,
gonna say,
yeah.
so when somebody first meets you, what's one of the first things that you do with a client? Like we talked about, um, de-escalating or deactivating the nervous system and stopping the loop. Like, what is the loop? Tell us more about that.
So, when I first meet someone, the most important thing for me is in all of my work that I do is I always meet somebody right where they are. I'm not trying to change them, not trying to alter how they feel or alter the situation. My job is to see where they are and I meet them exactly where they are. Um, the next thing I will do is I want to listen to them. Most people find this to be extremely healing in their lives when someone actually takes the time to truly listen and active listening. Like, I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm not thinking about how to respond to it. I am listening. And um, and then if there is a situation like I was mentioning to you, one of the first tools I use is the breath, because if we're not breathing, really breathing, which most of us just are not, myself included, the body automatically thinks that something is seriously wrong and will back itself into a freeze situation.
And
So
so the other
to
go ahead.
bring up something like, how about we take a few deep breaths together? Because most people, whether it's divorce, many, addictions, trauma, grief is a big one. The breath, it just, your body thinks it's sparing you by holding you in this survival place, which is very shallow breathing. So the oxygen isn't making it up here, and you're constantly in this activated state.
So
And therein
what
lies the loop.
the loop? Yeah. So what is the loop?
So the loop is, it's the story that just keeps going around and around. When I was when most of us, when we're in a divorce, we are putting those pieces together and we're trying to make sense of it. Unfortunately, it turns into this looping story, and it's very hard to turn it off. Very hard to turn it off. With addiction, whether it's food or alcohol or drugs, the actual addiction is speaking to you, and it's speaking to you in your own voice, which is very confusing. And it's telling you, when are we getting it? Where are we getting it? What do I have to do? How do we set up our day? And so it becomes this conversation of you not being present.
One of the things you mentioned was how it's so hard for us to sit through feelings, like sit through feelings specifically of discomfort, and that our society, especially now because we have social media and other things, uses all kinds of ways to escape. So, how talk to us a little bit about anxiety and those feelings, and what you can do to get them to not escape.
Mm. It's a practice. It's a lifelong practice. I think first you have to decide, do I want to be present with my feelings? Um, Usually that comes with enough pain of not feeling them and using too many distractions. And it feels like you're doing better without it, but you're not. So to make that decision of, okay, I'm going to sit with this feeling and see what this really is, because I have found, certainly through my education and myself, that our feelings are simply trying to give us information and they just want to be listened to. And instead of scrolling or we have so many choices on this. Um, to stop, and I often tell people, put your hand on your heart and take a few breaths. And what are you feeling? And it could be 10 different things at once. It can take time to get to what actually is. And when you can get there and have the courage to listen to it and speak to it gently, it's usually something from the past that's trying to inform you.
So most of us don't want to deal with that though, because
Mm-mm.
that's really difficult. So what happens if
Mhm.
I just focus on other things, enjoy social media and other things if I'm not harming myself physically, like I'm watching funny movies or I'm distracting myself from grief, like what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with some distraction. It's what distraction.
Mhm.
And so, what will happen is the feeling will get louder and louder. It's not going away.
Mhm.
And worst case, it will store in your body and it will come out as my low back hurts. I have a toothache. My hair is falling out. Um, my nails aren't growing. I feel sick all the time. So it will happen. I mean, there's a most of us know this book, or in my field, the body keeps the score.
Yes, we've talked
It's a
about that a lot here
very
too.
very intense book. Do not read that book by yourself. And um, it's just truth because we're not disconnected here. So there is some distraction, but there's also walking outside of your door and doing some breath and moving your body. I think I'd mentioned to you shaking. And so if I can pick my phone up and scroll Instagram for 15 minutes, is that a problem? It depends. Not usually, but how do I feel when I get off of there?
Mhm.
Or what if I was to step outside and stand on the grass and just shake my body and breathe and just breathe? It completely rearranges the brain and it calms the nervous system. And then maybe you don't necessarily feel like watching, you know, endless movies or, spending hours like that. Perhaps you'll feel a little more calm and able to make a better choice.
Yeah. We
I'm
talked a
very,
little
very
bit.
guilty of
Go ahead.
this.
Say
So,
it
I
again.
mean, I said I'm guilty of this. We're humans and we're trying to navigate this attention thing because everyone wants our attention. But for us to give our attention to ourselves and to our feelings, that's where big changes happen.
So talk about the role that dopamine, the pleasure hormone,
Mm.
plays in all of this.
Well, we are dopamine seekers, and some people are super dopamine seekers. It's a big field, as you know, in neuroscience, um, certainly in addiction, and just in general health. So some of the better ways to um, manage that dopamine are cold water on your face. 1 minute of a cold shower at the end, not freezing,
Oh,
is evidently, someone told me this the other day, from the Morrison Center, said that 1 minute can upload your dopamine for the entire 24 hours.
gosh, it sounds like torture to me because
I
I like hot
was
showers. Like
like,
I don't want.
"Ooh." Like, okay. I mean, at certain points in my life, I have done it. And I was like, so why are you not doing it now? But what's the problem? Um, hmm, something to look at. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one
And
I'm not.
the other
I
thing
don't know about
is,
that for me.
yeah, I know. It's really cold water on your face. Um, 30 seconds would be something to work up to. Some people literally put their face in a bowl. Not necessary. You can do a very cold washcloth and just breathe through that. Start with 10 seconds. So there's something about the cold. It shocks the system, but it like uploads all this dopamine.
Interesting. I mean, I've heard about
It's the point.
cold shocks being used to distract from trauma. Like if someone's going to court, and they know that it's going to be really stressful, that they can drink like really cold water or splash it on their face, because then their brain gets distracted for a little bit from like, oh my gosh, I have this, because it can't focus on two things at the same time like that.
No, no. But
Yeah.
the it's like, where do we want our focus? Because everybody wants our focus.
Yeah.
Mm,
You had
yeah.
said that a lot of times people don't talk to their anxiety,
Mm.
and that it's really, really scary. How does this work into what you do with people?
So if there is a situation where it's, the anxiety is very high, and we have found a lot of that, particularly since the pandemic, a lot of um, anxiety is almost like free floating, and very few people have really dealt with what that situation was for each of us, because it was very traumatic for everybody. So the anxiety is, if you can work into a practice where you can begin to, again, just begin to talk to it. Like, the anxiety is here. Pushing things away makes them come at you harder. So with anxiety, to regulate yourself with some breath, perhaps some movement, and then to feel safe enough to speak to the anxiety, whether it's writing it, asking it, what are you trying to tell me? Is this real? Because anxiety is all about the future.
Mhm.
Anxiety is what may happen. And to bring ourselves into the moment, into the now, very, very challenging, especially when you're super heightened in a real crisis situation, like the situations that you deal with.
Yeah, I mean, you're making me think of the words we use that I do all the time, and our clients also do, is the word we awfulize or we catastrophize. We what if, like, but what if this happens? But what about that? And what
Mhm.
if, and it's just like this, oh my gosh, how am I gonna take care of it if this happens? And so we're always like spinning. I mean, I've had so many sleepless nights in the past decade of with just court stuff. Like, what if the judge changes her mind and like revokes the order, or what if nothing ever happens, what if I never get a chance to speak, what if nobody ever hears what I have to say, what if he keeps getting away with this?
So what if that's a very powerful statement. When you start saying that to yourself, what if, you could say, what if it all works out?
Mhm.
It tends to stop you in
that's
your
that's
tracks. You're
very
like, what?
hard for us here listening. Very hard.
What? What? What if it does?
Right.
But it
I mean,
won't.
and that's a
Yes.
good reminder, because for all of that, like in my own personal situation, for all of that catastrophizing, it has worked out, knock wood. It has worked out really well on so many levels, but yet
Hmm.
throughout I was terrified and
Completely.
angry and feeling like this is so unfair. And
Hmm.
so when you said the thing about what if and what if it does work out, one of the ways that we work with our clients that a therapist taught me is like, what are you freaking out? Okay, I'm freaking out. This hasn't happened. And the therapist said, think about putting the word yet at the end. This hasn't happened
Mm.
yet. So, yes, you're freaking out, but there's still that opportunity. It's not over
Yes,
yet.
because we are the only ones that can control our minds. But most of us, the mind is running the show.
Mhm,
We're stuck in between here. And, there's a famous saying, that is not a good neighborhood.
mhm,
Like, your mind, it's weaving those loops and those stories, many of which haven't happened, simply aren't true, and
mhm.
are 100%, you know, projection. So question your mind, question your thoughts. Like, is this true? Have the courage to say, is this actually true?
Yeah,
And
I think for a lot of
oftentimes
people
the
in
key
our
answer is, I
situation,
don't know. Yeah,
yeah,
I
they
don't
need
know.
somebody else to make, they need help um questioning the facts and the reality, because
Absolutely.
often it's another person's voice in their head that they've lived with, as you know and I know, for
Mhm.
a long time, and they listen to that other person's voice rather than the facts and the truth. And that makes me think of the line, your feelings are not facts,
Mhm.
but it
They're
feels
good
like they are.
information. Of course it does. Of course it does, because you're already in that heightened state. And it takes a lot of support to get to that place, where you're ready to question it yourself. But can you take like a 1 second breath? Can you shut that down for just 1 second, 2 second, 3 second? Question, just say, okay, okay, okay. Like, I walked around and said, okay, a lot, a lot.
Interesting.
It's like, all right, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. Mm-hmm. And some days are just like that. But I know, your audience, your clients are just, it's like a fire hose.
Yes.
But we have support and we ask for help. It's very much a collection of people to help. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
I
I know
like
that.
how it's helping people learn to talk themselves through it. That's a big part of
Mm-hmm.
it. We often tell our clients, well, we're certainly not mental health professionals, but we'll say, it's not going to stay like this. It's really bad now, but part of it is learning to talk yourself through. And so it's not
Mm-hmm.
like these triggers and these terrible feelings will go away and you think, oh, it should be done. It's been 8 years. Like, why am I still freaking out when I see that person's name in my email or I see a court document? I feel like even I, with all of the triumphs in this last decade, I
Mm-hmm.
still, if I see something, like when I look in the mailbox, I get a little nervous. If I think, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
there's something from court, like getting a jury duty notice. Oh my gosh, terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
seeing an email, I just think, oh no, is it going to start all over again? So it doesn't go away, but I can calm myself down a lot faster, when in the past it would
Mm-hmm.
be a couple of hours and needing to call like three people and be like, oh my gosh, oh my God. And they're like, no, think about it. Think about it. I'm like, I can't. Now it's just like, okay, you know, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like what you
It's a
said about talking
practice.
yourself. Yeah.
It's a practice, and it takes that willingness, to stop yourself, to pause, but gently pause.
Yeah. I know one thing that you mentioned that you do to help people in the midst of whatever the issue is to have them focus on a time in life in the past that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm. If you can conjure that visual back up, if you can write about it, if you can conjure it up, let's say it's truly in the moment and you need to bring yourself to a place where you felt strong, you felt centered, and you felt safe and supported. That is something you store, like you put it in your bag and pull it out every single time you need it. Like, let's pull that one back out. It's a tool. It's a very quick tool of, wait a second, I felt like that. I have the ability to be safe. I can get there. I can get there. And sometimes you can add to that. You can pull your children into that picture. You can pull your friends in. Like, we have these gigantic imaginations, and for us to get back to using those, like creating that actual picture of what this would look like. Where are you? What does it look like? What is the weather? I mean, take it away. Use your creativity and then go to that place. Go to that place.
That makes me think about building resilience. And I think about things in
Mm,
particular with my children. Um,
mm-hmm,
that I awfulize and they awfulize. Like, so I try to help them work through things by saying, okay, I know you're freaking out right now, but let's pull back and look at all of the things that you've made it through. You felt like this before. So, for example, my daughter is going to Australia for a semester abroad in a couple of weeks, and she's excited, but she's terrified. And she's probably going to
Mhm.
kill me for saying this, but so she's not here though. But she when I said, "What are you so worried about?" She said, "I'm worried. What if I don't make friends?" And I said, "You always make friends. You always do. Let's think about it. When you went away to farm camp when you were really little, you were terrified that you weren't going to feel comfortable and that you'd be really homesick. And you were for a little bit. And
Mhm.
then, of course, you made
Mhm.
friends. You went to Spain, in high school, and you were really scared about that. And you made friends too. Now you're going away for a semester, of course you're gonna make friends, you're gonna have a great time, like, think back. It's just that this is
Mhm.
part of the process. You know yourself, and you know that you always get scared with these big transitions. And so as it's happening, you are gonna be homesick. You are not gonna make great friends right away, but that's to be
Mhm.
expected, right? That's part
Mhm.
of who you are and knowing yourself and knowing this is all part of it, and I can talk myself through until I feel more comfortable and less homesick and meet some new people, and then I'm gonna be fine
Mhm.
because that's who I am. Like, I always make friends.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant tool. It works for them as, certainly for them. My daughter too just left for a semester abroad, and I watched how different she was getting ready.
Mhm,
I thought, wow, she's really not herself. She's very anxious about this and, using all of her tools, her former anxiety tools, to
mhm,
manage stuff. Of course she is. And, you know, so I said the same thing. It's wonderful. Like let's take it apart. Let's poke some holes in it and see if it really holds any weight. Like, does your anxiety hold weight? Is
mm.
it true? Is it
Yeah,
true?
I love that. I'm writing that down.
Based on that the your past experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
resilience, incredible. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that you talked about is how the subconscious can sometimes dictate who we choose in terms of our partner. Talk a little
Hmm.
bit about that.
um, many, many years ago, someone told me to read the book, How to Get the Love You Want. And it's written by a very brilliant man, Harville Hendricks. It's a classic. He does workshops and very famous guy. Strongly suggests that book. And he explains in it, well, he explains how to communicate in such a manner that very few of us would have ever thought of, like mirroring and, really checking in. Like, let me make sure I heard you correctly. And is there more? But his premise is we subconsciously choose our partners because they are the people that we're going to work through our trauma with. So there were plenty there were plenty of times I thought, seriously? Uh,
Right?
what? But it wasn't safe. So what are you talking about?
Mhm.
So we find this, though, I have found this in my life with every relationship, be it a client, um, a friend, or a romantic relationship. I'm subconsciously I am going to choose the person who is going to raise those issues for me. Like, my one of my daughters will raise certain issues with me that she doesn't mean to. She can be walking around and the issue will be raised with me, and I will think, oh, that's about me. Like, she's here to bring that forth for me so I can look at it. Friends, clients, the clients where they pushed me. Here, I'm the trainer, I'm pushing them, but they're pushing me in a different area that I don't want to look at.
Mm.
And then they occur again and again and again. So, with our romantic partners, that's who we chose on a very, very deep level because they are the ones that are going to bring up all those important issues for us to grow.
I've
It's
heard
like
that we often marry the parent, like somebody like the parent that we didn't get what we needed from. What do you think about that?
100%. Seen that many times.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's
So
that's a whole other
that's a
conversation.
whole other. So
Right.
here come those issues, right? And he discusses, so are you in a safe relationship where the two of you can say, look at our issues together. We have the opportunity to grow together with this, but we have to create this extraordinarily safe place. That's best case scenario.
Mhm.
Most of the time, it's like this. And you don't know why, because, certainly we weren't raised with, oh, this is what's going to happen and you'll be fine. We're raised with, this is all supposed to work out exactly the way you want it. No, it's not. It's so much more complicated. But the growth piece is there for us, but it's scary. Takes a
It,
lot of courage and a lot of willingness, for
it
sure.
it it does, and that's why people often talk about you got to do the work.
You
And
do.
I think, do you think a lot
Well,
of
you
people do
don't,
the work
but
in terms of the population who are dealing with trauma? Do you think most people are doing the work on their trauma, or do you feel like a lot of people are not? No.
no, I don't believe they are, sadly.
Is there
It's
something,
very scary.
yeah, is there
Hmm.
some way, like some personality quality, or is there something where someone is more likely to deal with trauma? Like what kinds of, I don't know, traits would a person have, or should a person try to have, or how can you convince someone like this is good for you to deal with the trauma? It's really uncomfortable. Like, how do you coax someone who's on the fence? Who's like, I can't do it. I
Someone,
just can't.
someone that is on the fence, that's a much better situation. You can
Hmm.
sit down and say, well, you will choose this exact same scenario again. And if you
Hmm.
don't choose it with this person or in this area, you will choose it over here and over here. And again, it will show up in your body in one form or another. It just will.
That's why
The
so
the
many people
body
in
does
toxic
not lie. Hmm.
relationships, they keep repeating the cycle and they don't understand, why do I keep dating the same person over and over and over?
Yes,
So
because it's
go ahead.
what we have to look at with ourselves. Therein, lies the work. So if you're on the fence, that's a much easier conversation. But there's stigma around it. Probably there is certainly a lot of fear, and you sort of have to get to a place where you've had enough of your own crap.
Hmm.
Can you get that honest with yourself and say, I did. I got that honest with myself. I was like, I am not doing this again. So, what do I need to do in order to like excavate everything? I want to examine my beliefs. I want to, for the 50th time, I want to do it again. I want to get underneath this because what is making my decisions for me? And I found uh, oftentimes it was unresolved trauma was making my decisions for me. So, in other words, the little girl, the little girl's making the decisions for me. And
Mm.
I love her very much, but she is not the adult in the house.
Yeah, I feel like also going through, for me, the process of this divorce and post judgment really forced me to grow up a lot.
Mm, so much, so much.
And I didn't
And
realize how emotionally, in some ways, I never thought of myself as emotionally immature, but by sort of
mhm,
being led in certain types of romantic relationships, that was a pattern I had for a long times. And it's interesting where you can be very successful in business and in other areas of
mhm,
life and very independent and a role model, and yet be dealing with certain things where it's like, why how did this happen?
mhm,
And,
mhm.
but there's so much shame associated with that too.
Oh, so much shame. And shame is, unfortunately, it's a big driver, particularly with women,
Mhm,
because we get this idea that it's supposed to look a certain way. I mean, men have this idea as well, but I think that shame hits women on a much deeper level. And it's like it's this failure, right? It's this public failure that, um, I can't keep my marriage together. I remember those exact feelings. The shame was just so far up in me. And sometimes it's reflected, because you don't, um, suddenly you're not invited to certain places because you're not a couple.
mhm,
And and I turned that on myself with shame, as though I was broke. There was something wrong with me now. It's like I have found that in two cases, divorce and cancer. People
mm,
feel almost that that it's contagious, and it's not. But divorce in particular, it is a step back, like, oh, and it changes the shame I had around failing my children, even
mm,
though I didn't fail them. I failed in giving them what I wanted to give them, which was a big house and a happy marriage and this different life. And they didn't get that. They got two different households, but they got tremendous safety here and stability.
yeah,
So there's so much that you end up unraveling around that shame thing, and most of it is put upon, from the outside. But women tend to take that on as though it's us, and it's not. It's
yeah.
not.
we
Mm-mm.
we have a number of clients who are very successful in other areas of their lives, and they
Mm,
feel so ashamed because when people find out that their relationship is falling apart, or they're in this crazy custody battle or whatever, they can't get along with the co-parent, um, they are inadvertently blamed for it. Like, and they
mhm.
feel like, how could, like, there's again, like, yeah, I've failed, like I should be able to make this better, and I can't. I'm doing everything I can, and people don't understand it, and they're thinking something's wrong with me because who's in court for years with somebody?
Mm,
Whose
mhm,
ex is having, why are
mhm.
they clashing so much about this? Why doesn't the judge just do that? Why did you stay so long? Why
Oh
didn't
yeah.
you leave sooner?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm. So one of the statements in that is the I statement. And once we put ourselves in the I, then we're alone. And it's a we problem.
Yeah.
It's very much the we.
Right.
And we have no control over the courts and the other person.
Right.
And it's only natural that we feel like I should be able to fix this. Recently, I have felt that way. Like, how could I have let something happen?
Right.
It wasn't
Feeling
just me. I'm
responsible
guilty,
for everything.
right? That I'm not, a magician who lives in two different. I mean, and I believe that that is kind of unique to women, because this whole shame thing is very loaded, very loaded. Like, we're supposed to make this all work and look very beautiful.
Yeah. The other thing that comes up a lot with women in particular is the comment, wow, you're so, great at this, or you're so beautiful, or you're so successful. I never thought that you would be in a situation like this. Like, you of all people, I didn't expect something like this from.
I would call that a lot of projection, but that's very painful. That's very unkind. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
It comes up, yeah, it comes up
Very
a lot
unkind.
in
I
in
mean,
this community, especially with highly professional men and
uh,
women where their friends, like,
mhm.
don't realize how cutting that comment is. Like, I thought you were better than this. You should have
Oh,
known you're a there, and people's careers have been
wow.
weaponized against them. You're a therapist and you were married to that person. How could you be good at your job if you fell for that?
It's it's just that's very, very limited, very ignorant. We are so multifaceted. We're very complicated people. We have many different parts to us, and sometimes that one piece is that's our edge. That's where we have to go to do our work. And when someone else is saying that, that's a major projection of their own.
Yeah,
That's their fear of
right.
what if this happens to me, like the
Exactly.
contagion.
Right. And that's
Hmm.
when, why a lot of times during these divorces and separations, you really reevaluate your relationships with the people in your life.
Oh, so
There's some
much, so
culling
much.
that goes on, and it's really unfortunate. I found um some people that I never expected to be there for me really were, which was amazing.
Yes.
And others you're
Hmm.
like, wow, you are
Wow.
not helpful
Yeah.
at all.
And it's so painful. That brought me down on my knees a number of times. I was like, you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about too, in terms of trauma, sometimes families will say, especially as people are, they have a couple of failed relationships, not always just marriages. They'll be like, you did it again. How could you keep doing this? Why are you doing this?
That is an accusatory projection. That is so not helpful.
Yeah.
Like, let's ask better questions. Oh, maybe we need to take a look at what's underneath this.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know those. It's the statements that come out, uh, very, very hard to forgive or let go of. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
To this day, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that
So
was not
now,
helpful. That was,
we touched a little bit on how your health can be affected by trauma. A number of our clients have
mm,
are cancer survivors. They got
mm,
cancer while they were in the relationship. Thankfully, knock wood, all of the ones that we have as clients have recovered from cancer, which is really interesting because you think of what they were dealing with while still in that relationship. And you also had cancer. You want to
mm-hmm,
talk about
mm-hmm.
that and also what you did regarding home goods?
So yes, I got cancer in the middle of the pandemic, February of 22, and I was very, very shocked and put some of that exact wording that you and I were just talking about. I felt that I had failed because I'm a nutrition coach, I'm a trainer, bar, Pilates, this, that, the other thing, recovery coach. And somehow I thought that I wasn't supposed to because I was doing all of this correct. So
Hmm.
it came and repeated itself for me. Um, I have theories on why it happened for me. And and yes, I said for me because I did choose to really put a spin on it. It was like, to me, that was the universe giving me the hardest stop of my life. It was stop, stop. Here's something you really, really have to look at.
Wow.
Um, and I did, and I did, and it was very, very painful. It happened. It was the pandemic. It was not a great time for my kids. Most of us were just like bug eyed. My business evaporated. It was very, very difficult. And and yet it gave me an opportunity to go way under with myself and say, okay, so now what? So now what? How do you want to handle this? And became an empty nester, ended a long-term relationship, and decided to absolutely positively excavate this. And with home goods, so I would go. This was when I knew I was doing some interesting regulating. Is so I would leave radiation, and it was like my car drove itself to Stanford Home Goods. And I would just place my hands. I have a very close friend who would say, I just love pushing that carriage. And I would place my hands on the carriage and just wander. And I thought, I don't want anything, but something about this is like it's calming me down. Sometimes I would send, a friend a picture of I found this gold gorilla. I was like, should I get this?
Wait, you said gold gorilla, right? You just said gold
Yeah,
gorilla?
there's a gold statue of a gorilla. I was like, maybe this is what I need. Okay. So you do what you need to do safely, um,
Did
and
you
this
get the
and the
gold gorilla?
I didn't, and I wish that I had, because
Oh,
then I
really?
saw it again and I thought, I should have gotten that. Yeah, yeah, my little cancer gorilla. But what really saved me during that time was walking outside.
Mhm.
And it was hard to walk, it was hard to breathe, it was hard to function, but it was walk around the block and then walk around 2 blocks, and keep going. But so much of it was those feelings that you and I were discussing, that shame. It came up from I don't know where. I was like, what is this? And people were they were like, you? Yeah. And I sort of took that on like, well, this wasn't supposed to happen to me. And it happens all the time, unfortunately. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter. But people said some very alarming things like, but you eat all that kale and you got cancer. It's like,
What are you supposed to do with
mm.
that statement?
At first, I didn't know how to take that. I didn't know how to handle that because I was so crushed.
Mhm.
And then eventually I just was, yeah, yeah, hmm yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
even
I
with
think it's
kale.
what you said before too. People cannot fathom that the world is illogical and unfair. And when they see
And
something like
messy.
this happening to somebody, they think this can't be possible. I don't want to hear it because I don't want to think that this could ever happen to me too. Right?
Right, right. And I was a direct reflection of that. It was like, if it can happen to her, then nobody's, yeah. So it's a
There's no
tremendous amount of
safety.
fear. No safety. Mm-mm. There's a lot of fear around it. And that we all have to deal with that ourselves, of what is my fear around this?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I know part of being a recovery coach is also being a role model. So,
Hmm. It is.
congratulations to you for a few
Thank you.
things that you've made it through.
Yes,
I'm
thank you.
I'm wondering, of course, Maura, we've been talking for almost an hour. But
No way.
yeah.
Mm,
Um, but I'm wondering, you
love
mentioned a
talking
couple
to you.
of
Love that.
ideas that people can do to help themselves. So you talked a little bit about shaking the body. You talked about how for you just walking outside and doing that and the cold, for me, no cold showers, cold washcloth maybe. But are there any other things that people can do? And then we'll get to hiring a recovery coach, but other
Mm.
things that, off the top of your head that people can do to deal with their trauma, immediately, like a
In
Band-Aid.
yeah, in the immediate, it is you need to stand up and move, and you need to start breathing. If you can get yourself to stand up and change rooms and start breathing, you will immediately change brain chemistry. And
Wow.
then yeah, oh yeah, and then you're going to feel like you have a modicum of control. And it's literally moving some sort of muscle. Just move, shake your head, move, and do those big, big breaths. And step outside your door and stare at the sun. Not directly, but yes. um, take the light, because the light is also big calmer. Like, another tool is saunas.
Really?
Not
See,
everybody has
that I like. I like warmth.
Not everybody has the ability to do this. However, there's lots of different ways. You don't have to buy a sauna. You can actually buy an infrared mat, and you would get down on the mat and just lay there. If you can
I never
sit
heard of an
yourself in a
infrared
sauna,
mat.
hmm yeah. If you can sit in a sauna for 5 minutes, the it's extraordinary what happens. Again, big calmer, big calmer. hmm
Yeah, I'm gonna
And
try
if
that,
you
but not the cold
feel,
shower. I'll do the sauna.
if you feel, the phone call thing is tricky sometimes. Sometimes, am I going to get on the phone and start telling this story over and over again? And that's feeding the fire.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's not the way to go. Sometimes sit down with a piece of paper and pour it out. The act of writing, as you well know, is extremely powerful. Like,
Mhm.
head to hand, just like that, boom, right on the paper, and then it's out of you, right? You can tear that piece of paper up, you can put it in the freezer, you can put it in a pretty box. It's out of your head.
Yep.
Big tool. Yeah,
You're
really
talking
big
to someone
tool.
who's journaled for more than 40 years.
Right, right.
So
You
helpful.
still have
It
your
saved me.
journal? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing like pen to paper.
Right.
It's like we
And it's
were
also,
we were born to heal from that. Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
also very good for documentation as well. Looking back at 20-year relationship to be like, wow, I knew things
I was
then that I
doing
didn't
that.
know that I knew. Amazing.
Yeah. Careful with those old journals. Mhm. Yeah. Careful, don't be mean to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just to me, it was, I haven't looked at a lot of that stuff, but it's fascinating. All
It
right.
is
Well,
fascinating.
anyway, so Maura, thank you
Thank you.
so much for coming on. Can you tell people the best way to find you?
Yes, my email is mora@wellnessm2.com. That's the best way to get me. It'll also take you to my website, and I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
but this has been
give you any
so
information.
helpful.
This has been really lovely. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad
Thank
that
you.
you didn't go with your first instinct and run away from me when you heard what I did as a career.
But that's the practice that comes. Is I thought, oh look, I'm getting, it has nothing to do with Lisa. She's got me right back in it. Step back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, we worked through it and here we are.
yes, we did. Yes, we did. Thank you so
And we're
much.
going to keep getting together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes,
Yes.
you need to help me do some writing.
Yes. Can't wait for that. All
Okay.
right. So anyway,
Lovely.
thank you again. And everybody, I hope you have gotten something out of this. I certainly have. I have all kinds of like things to try. Again, sauna for me, not cold shower. Um, but you know how to reach out to Maura, and Maura, I will talk to you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.